Hello and welcome to the stream. We are waiting for Dr. Falk. Let's see if I can hear you somehow. Hello there. Nice to meet you. I can't hear you yet.
Okay.
Let's see. Now I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, we are now playing with fire.
Yeah. Very nice to meet you. And here is Ville Bråke to say hi.
Oh, what a sweetie. Male or female?
It's a male.
Okay, buck.
Buck. Yeah, I don't know much about bunnies, but he's
Oh,
very soft and cuddly.
I've had bunnies for like 15 years.
Oh,
Love them.
nice.
We're on our third. We have a doe. She's she's right now. She's asleep, so I don't like rousing her when she's asleep. But should I make an exception? Yeah, I'll make an
Just
exception.
rat.
Just a second.
Just rattle with some food.
Get her cookies. Oh, look at her. Just daddy. Where's that boyfriend? Here it goes. Just here it goes. Okay.
Oh, so cute.
She just got woken.
I love it.
Yeah, she doesn't like to be waking up.
She's so
All
big.
right.
Mwah.
Was that live? Or yes, that was live.
Yeah, is that your wife? Is that your wife?
Yeah, that's my wife off screen.
Yeah, tell her
Yep.
hi from me.
He says hi. I never actually caught your name.
Oh, it's Daniel.
Daniel, okay.
Vinterhamn in Swedish.
Okay.
That's Winter Haven in English.
Awesome.
Hi. So, very nice to meet you. This is my first interview, and it's how do you say? It's a very large jump for me to be able to talk to people on the platform, because
Cool.
I have a lot of how do you say social anxiety. So it's a lot of work for me to be able to talk to you. But
Right.
I've been looking forward to it, and I'm really glad we're doing this.
Cool. Awesome.
So you are an Egyptologist. Do you want to
I'm sorry.
do you want to present yourself?
Oh, okay. My name is David Falk. I am an Egyptologist and a Bible scholar. I did my PhD at the University of Liverpool. I have 4 graduate degrees in total. I recently came out with a book called The Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian Context and Illustrated Journey, and I'm a research associate at the Vancouver School of Theology. And I have a little YouTube channel called Ancient Egypt and the Bible.
Yeah, enjoy it. So I saw you there. You got recommended by me by the algorithm. So I'm happy about that.
Cool.
And well, religion is a really dear subject of mine. I grew up in a very religious home. I became a skeptic in my teenage years, and just a few years ago, I discovered that everyone can actually, how do you say, everyone can use religion in their own ways. So I think religion is for everyone, even atheists, in a manner.
Yeah.
And I really want to. I really want to. How do you say? I really want to convey that through my YouTube channel.
Sure.
The connection between the skepticism I hold so dear to my heart, to actually be able to use religion in your day-to-day life to improve it, right?
Okay.
I grew up in a missionary family, actually.
Okay.
So it was all around me.
Right.
It was quite a, how do you say, an experience.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet.
Did you grow up in a religious home?
I did, but you could say it was much more of a liberal sort of religious home. So
Can you
there
describe
wasn't.
that, please?
Well, there wasn't really any compulsion to believe any one thing.
Hmm?
Okay, so while my parents were religious and still are religious,
Hmm?
it wasn't say a it wasn't a home that had strong convictions.
Hmm?
Okay, so they sort of let us explore religion as we saw fit,
Hmm?
but sort of carefully within the confines of, say, the Christian faith.
Hmm?
My
Wow.
parents aren't really deep thinkers. They're not really deep thinkers.
Hmm?
So for them, sort of the intricacies of religion are not something that they're really into.
Hmm. Well, for me, I was a very curious child. I wanted to learn a lot of things all the time. Um, and religion became some kind of break for that, because the answers I got was because it says so in the Bible, or because God says so, and that was like the breaks I got. I got more curious, of course, and I
Yeah,
got very.
curiosity is a good thing.
Yeah. That's why I call myself a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher historian. I'm just loved learning things, right? That's the meaning of the word,
Sure,
right?
philosophy. Yeah, philos,
Yeah,
love, Sophie,
yeah,
wisdom, sophos.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think we can get um, that wisdom from many things, and the religion is one of them, right?
Yeah.
My central what I've been studying for the last past 5 years is how do I get wisdom from the ancient world, right? From the evolution of humankind, and how we used to live in the Stone Age, and how we can compare that
Okay.
to how we live today,
Sure.
and try to find common denominators. Do you say that in English?
Yes.
And try to learn and see if I can use that to map reality, and see if other people actually agree that life is like that in their way.
Right.
I've been studying a lot of psychology uh, on my free time. I haven't been able to go to school because of my anxiety problems. I'm just listening to lectures and try to my own models of how I try to learn about how things works. through those lectures and conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm here. That's why I called you.
Okay.
So I want to learn about ancient Egypt and the first city,
Okay, sure.
right?
Well, it wasn't the first city, but it is probably one of the oldest cult sites, if not the oldest cult site in Egypt. Okay, there were other settlements in Egypt that probably predate Nehken, but it is definitely the oldest we have identified as a cult site.
Is it? I've heard some kind of other cult site called Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah,
Is
Göbekli
that
Tepe.
yeah?
That's in Turkey.
And Turkey, yeah.
In Turkey, and it's a lot older.
It's a lot older.
A lot older.
It's not. Doesn't have any settlements around it, right?
Not that we found. At Göbekli Tepe, we do find, say, lots of animal remains. Fragments of, say, agriculture there, but not so much settlements. Now, we do have to understand, too, that it's still a site in its infancy as far as its excavation goes. They may find a whole lot more yet.
Yeah, let's hope so, right?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
hope so.
they're just beginning at Göbekli Tepe.
Oh yes.
Okay.
I love it. I'm looking forward to following the excavations, and that's one point in the bucket list to go there and look at it, right? So, and that's the same with Hierakonpolis in Greek, right?
Yeah, that's really hard to pronounce. I mean, even I still struggle to say Herakleopolis. It's just I don't know how the Greeks managed to name it that, but there it is.
But the Egypt word for it is Nehken.
Nehken. Yeah, it's Nehken. Yeah, it's with a kind of a hard H, what they call a round H. Nehken.
Nehken. Yeah. Okay. So, have you found any evidence of settlements around Nehken?
Oh yeah, there's actually settlements all up down the Nile there, in that particular region. We find, say, a lot of pre-dynastic stuff there. There's a lot of pre-dynastic settlements there. Badari culture, Nagata III. These are sort of the cultures that were there before the pharaohs of the first and second dynasties. So we definitely do find traces of settlement there going at least as far back as I'd say about 4300 BC, possibly as early as 5000 BC.
Let's see. How do you think the site Nehken? How big was it?
It actually wasn't that large. We do have, say, several temples there. The temple that has been excavated there is actually, it really dates to more of the third dynasty, third to fifth dynasty. So it's actually an Old Kingdom temple. But we also have artifacts there that go well earlier than that were found in a foundation deposit there. So those artifacts seem to have alluded to basically that there had been a temple there before that, say, third dynasty temple, third to fifth dynasty temple. So there does seem to be, an antiquity of that site as a say, a ritual site that long predates the temple itself. Because we find artifacts in that foundation deposit that easily date to Nagata III. Sometimes called Nagata III. So this is Nagata III is sometimes called Dynasty Zero.
Okay.
It's sometimes called Dynasty Zero because this is where we find the first traces of Egyptian kingship. The famous Scorpion King is from Nagata III.
Okay.
both Scorpion 1 and Scorpion 2. The Egyptian king Hor is from that region. It has from evidence from there as well. So a lot of these kings were buried at Abydos, but it does seem that Nehken was the royal temple and possibly even the capital of the Nagata 3 culture.
Do you think it was used for rituals like every day, or was it only on like once a month or every week, or do you think?
No, I think it was
work there all the time.
Yeah, I think this was an active temple. We have evidence of several pylons being built there. It's added up over the years. It was essentially an active cult site, at least, as I said, from Nagata 3 all the way to the Ptolemaic period. So it was a very active site.
How many people do you think worked there daily?
Daily? Well, the thing is, Egyptian temples were usually worked in shifts, or in what's called files. Okay? And a file was usually set to service for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they didn't have to serve again for another year.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would have this constant rotation of priests. You'd have some priests that would be there all the time.
Yeah.
Like your chief lector priest.
Yeah.
But then you'd have others that would be rotated in and out.
Okay. Where were they working otherwise?
Well,
when they were not there.
Some of them may have been working at the nearby site of Edfu, because Edfu is really close by.
Yeah.
Nehken is located south of Luxor and really close to Edfu. And Edfu is a big settlement. Big. So my guess is that most of the people who worked at, say, Nehken were originally, at least, spent most of the year at Edfu.
Okay.
And both of these sites are very, very, both Edfu and Nehken are very, very important sites to the god Horus.
Yeah.
And Horus is the god of kingship.
What were they doing in this nearby city?
Well, there is a temple there. There's an agricultural settlement there.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're farming. They're farming.
And the priests?
The priests also had. It depends. If they were like part-time priests, they might have served in like the military. It wasn't uncommon for priests to have other occupations, like being a scribe, like being in the military, even being an artisan. You did have full-time priests that was their only job, but you also had a lot of part-time priests.
Yeah, I understand.
But they were all from the upper class. They're all from the upper class.
Okay. So, was being an artisan an upper class work?
It could be. It could be. Okay, it's generally the middle class. It's as close to a middle class as Egypt got. Because Egypt was a stratified society. It had many ranks of social strata. You had the farmers on the bottom, and then you had the slaves. Yeah, slaves are above farmers. And that's because they're valuable. They're valuable. They had valuable skills. They're kind of like IT workers, guys you treat really, really badly, but have a very, very valuable skills. Okay. And then above them, you had your artisan class. Okay, and that's really your middle class. And then above that, you have your military, your scribes, and your priests. And then above that, royalty.
Were the slaves, could they be part of the family as in Greek and Italian culture later on, or was it only like the low of the low? How to say? Only bad treated people.
Well, no, they weren't. They could be part of the family. They were usually part of the inheritance.
Hmm?
Okay, so they generally didn't leave the families that they were sold to.
Hmm?
They could be rewarded. They could be set free. We have a few instances where, say, a widow emancipates the slave, and the way you emancipate a slave in Egypt is you adopt them. You adopt them as a son, and then
Hmm?
or daughter, and then give them a writ of emancipation.
Hmm?
We have a few instances in Egypt where a widow
Hmm?
basically emancipates a slave, essentially, makes the slave her son, emancipates him, and then marries him.
Hmm?
Okay, we have some instances of that. That
Yeah,
did happen.
I imagine. I can imagine. Well, like people marry their servants, right?
Yeah,
From
exactly.
yeah, and well, butlers have been a thing like for going through serving a family rather than serving a person, right?
Yeah.
That concept is um, uh, is clear to me. And do you have other like occupations you could find relatable to today's society or the society in the 1900s?
Well, there are always comparable occupations.
Yeah.
You know, but some of this it doesn't also shape well with modern society either. Like for example, artisans in ancient Egypt. Most of what they did was say temple reliefs, or they did tombs and the furniture, grave furniture for tombs. They, for the most part, worked for the monarch, the king,
Mm.
but they also could take side jobs too, and earn extra cash. So they were also private contractors.
Yeah. Well, um, could slaves be artisans?
Yes, it is possible to go up the ranks.
Mm.
Completely possible to go up or down the social strata.
Mm.
It didn't happen very often, but it did happen.
Mm.
We have there are a couple of instances where slaves went all the way up to being, say, the vizier, which is the equivalent of the prime minister of Egypt, second to
Mm.
the king.
Mm.
So we have a couple of examples of that.
Mm.
Like Apparel was a slave, and he worked all the way up to being King Akhenaten's vizier.
Mm.
We also have a second one that happened at the end of Dynasty 19, where the Chancellor Bey, the vizier, he would start off life as a slave and worked his way up the social strata. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I remember some instances from the Bible, right? That slave, uh, some slave became a king sometime. I can't
Well,
remember the
that
story.
that would be Joseph.
Yeah.
And Joseph was sold as a slave into Egypt, and had been, he was accused of a crime, and then he managed to work his way to become vizier of Egypt, and that happened during the second intermediate period of Egypt. So
Uh,
roughly around
what time did that?
1650, 1650
1650.
BC.
Yeah.
But we also has, as I say, we also have after that a couple of examples of it happening too. So it did happen. It did happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't common, but it did happen.
Yeah, I understand. Um, let's see. We have um, the how would you live as how did you live as a soldier in that time around yeah
Well,
time of Nehken?
well, Well, we have to understand the time of Nehken is really a long period.
Yeah.
Okay, Nehken as a city covers almost the entire history of ancient Egypt.
Mm.
You know, it covers, as I said, from pre-dynastic times all the way into the Ptolemaic times. A lot changed during that time. Okay,
Yeah.
and the life of a soldier definitely changed during that time.
Mm.
Like for example, early on, basically say early in the times of Nehken, soldiers would have been had done a lot more marching.
Mm.
Okay. Now, that's because the chariot had not yet been introduced into Egypt.
Mm.
Okay. Now, the way the military worked in Egypt was your rank in the Egyptian military was based upon what kind of equipment you could afford.
Mm.
Okay? The more costly your equipment, the higher your rank. And you had to
Yeah.
pay for it out of your pocket. So the king didn't supply you with arms.
Mm.
You had to supply you with arms.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I heard from the medieval times, from with the knights and stuff. At yeah, the better equipment you got, the better well positions you got, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
I guess
Egypt was no different.
yeah, I guess that's something you can see in all culture from all time, I guess.
I mean, if
And
you were poor in the Egyptian military, you were probably an archer.
Mm.
Okay? If you had a little more money, you could afford enough bronze to have a spear made. Okay, you were infantry, and you were above the archers. If you were wealthy enough to afford a chariot, then you could go all the way to the top and become a general. Okay, that was sort of the rank where after if you could get a chariot, that was sort of the elite. That was the elite of the Egyptian military.
Yeah.
So once you were in that sort of elite bracket, you could become captains or generals after that. And then at that point, it's just hard work or connections.
Yeah. How would you like? Would there be places where you train as a soldier, like with other soldiers?
Oh yeah, yeah. They had garrisons. They had
Yeah.
garrisons. They did do some training. They did do. They had a style of martial arts that goes back at least to the 11th dynasty.
Oh, can you tell me about it?
Oh yeah, this one's nice. You can actually see these. You see these wrestling moves
Yeah.
painted on the walls of the tombs at Beni Hassan, and these are the tombs of the Middle Kingdom nomarchs, basically regional governors, and they're essentially catalogs. I mean, each move is different. They're essentially catalogs of various martial arts positions. And some of the largest of these catalogs has like 300 moves.
And
Very
a lot
interesting.
of them was the wrestling moves.
Oh yeah, there were wrestling moves, throws, falls, basically almost everything you'd find in like jujitsu. You know, headlocks,
Yeah. What kind of weapon was most popular?
the spear.
A spear.
The spear is the weapon of choice in ancient times.
Spear with shields or without shields?
With shields.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally with shields. But they also had maces. Early on, they used maces. Later on, they didn't. So around the Middle Kingdom, the mace drops out of fashion. It only becomes a symbolical weapon after that.
Do you have a theory why?
Yeah, the chariot, essentially.
Oh.
Okay. And once you have chariot warfare, basically charioteers are going to be using bows, arrows, and javelin. At that point.
Yeah.
It's you're now looking there at ranged warfare, where they're using chariots as mobile archery platforms. So they're keeping a distance. They're keeping a distance and using archery to attack the opponent. Speed and distance.
Do you use the spears at all from the chariot? Only throwing spears?
They usually use only javelin, which are kind of a light throwing spear. Now the infantry, they'll have like the heavy spears.
Let's see. In the early days of these big settlements, was there how do you say how much evidence is there for how much evidence is there to see the hunting part of feeding the people, and
Okay.
the how do you say the övergång in Swedish? It's in English. The word is the progression, I guess, from hunting to
Agrarian?
using using the
the basically being hunter gatherers to a sedentary lifestyle, an agrarian lifestyle. Okay. We see that transition start happening pretty early. We do see agricultural settlements already in the Badari and Nagata cultures already. Okay, so we do see that in the pre-dynastic period. Okay, that's that. But they're still doing some hunting at that point. And that's because the Sahara Desert was a savanna. And you actually had game come in all the way to the Nile Delta from Africa. So they actually had like elephants, gazelle, wildebeest just wander all the way up to the Nile Delta. And that remained, there was still some savanna in what's now the Sahara Desert, all the way up until the end of the Old Kingdom. So even during, say, the time of the building of the Great Pyramids, there was still some hunting going on. They were hunting lions. That was more for sport than for food. But they did hunt
no
gazelle.
eating the lions at all.
No, they didn't usually eat the lions. They did keep them as a zoo, though.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the earliest zoo we have is actually from Nehken.
So that was
Paper
some
towel.
kind of
Our bunny's being naughty. She's
So,
tearing up a paper towel.
was it a part of some kind of religious rituals keeping?
We don't know
zoo?
exactly why, but we do find in this little zoo pens, lions, leopards, evidence of hippopotamus, crocodiles.
Motivating people to bring their whole families, I guess.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I mean, it probably did serve some religious purpose to have a zoo there. It might have also been something that was there just for the pleasure of the king. So we're not sure why they had a zoo, but they had a zoo.
But it was open to the public, right?
Well, we don't know. We don't know if it was open to the public. If it was in, say, for example, a temple precinct, then no, it wouldn't be open. Because temples weren't open to the public. They're not like church.
Holiday?
They're not like church. You don't get to go inside if you're a commoner.
Only on special occasions, or not at all?
Nope, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
Okay, it was the Egyptian religion was not a religion for the people. Now, like villages will have, say, private shrines
Yeah.
They'll have their private shrines, which are usually mud brick, very, very simple affairs. Their homes would have shrines, little shrines, like around the side of the door. You basically, on most Egyptian homes, you have the front door, and then you go around the side, go up some stairs, and there's a little private shrine on the outside where they would pay homage to their local deities or their ancestral gods before they went back inside the house. But that was private worship was a very different than say the public official worship of say the major cults of Egypt.
Was there any reason for the normal people to go visit like big places like Nehken?
Yes, there would be, and the average people did believe that their gods were inside those temples. We have evidence of, say, on the outsides of these temples, either offerings being burnt, or we also find these little amulets shaped like an ear. And the idea is that the god inside can hear your prayers through the amulet that you're going to leave at the base of the temple wall there. We even have a few temples where the priests are aware of this practice and actually carve ears on the outside of the temple walls for that purpose. So they're aware of this. They're aware of this.
Do you think the ears were something the commoners made themselves, or did they buy them somewhere?
They were bought. They seem to be a mass-produced item.
Yeah.
They were made of faience, so they have this bright, shiny blue glaze on them. They're actually quite attractive.
Was the color blue something like special?
Oh yeah. Egyptians have been using faience at least since the Third Dynasty. It was just one of those things that they have a special clay with a copper salt that produces this magnificent blue glaze. It's a self-glazing ceramic.
So what did the color blue represent for them? You know?
I don't get too much into say color theory, because I think there's a lot of problems with color theory.
Yeah, me too.
Like there was I mean, back in the late say 90s, early 2000s, a lot of Egyptologists were into color theory. Oh, this color, the red means the sun, and yellow means gold, and no, sometimes a color is just a color.
Yeah.
Like there was this there was a lot of, say, these yellow coffins in the 21st and 22nd dynasties, and these color theorists, were going on how, well, this is to replicate the color of gold, and the meaning of this is the sun god Re and all this malarkey. Well, it turns out that they did a chemical analysis of the glaze on these coffins, and they discovered that originally these coffins the glaze was transparent, and the underlying pigment was white.
Yeah.
It's just like any glaze on a painting where it yellowed over time.
Yeah.
Because of age.
Yeah. So the theory of gold is a bit far-fetched there.
Yeah.
Now
there is a significance to the metal gold for the Egyptians. They did think that the metal gold was the flesh of the gods. And upon death, should they survive the trials of the afterlife, boy, those were trials, and they reach Osiris, and Osiris resurrects them, that their flesh will be transformed into gold and their bones into iron, just like the gods. It was their way. It was their form of apotheosis, becoming like gods.
Oh, Apotheosis. That's a new word for me. Can you tell me a little about the trials?
Oh, well, the afterlife was a very perilous place. Should you survive the whole mummification thing, and the whole reason people were mummified was to stop decomposition. The biggest thing that Egyptians feared was starving to death in the afterlife. They were deeply, deeply afraid of starvation. Okay, really, really afraid of starvation. So their biggest question in their mind is, how am I going to continue to be fed in the afterlife? Well, you need a body to be fed. You know, to be given offerings, to be given food and drink offerings, you need a body. So what they would do is they would mummify your existing body, thinking that your soul can come to and from the body. Okay? And this is also why they also had extra backups in their tombs. Backups.
Backup bodies.
Backup bodies. They had statues of themselves in the tombs. Reliefs in the tombs. Sarcophagi that were shaped like a human being. Any of these could serve as a proxy body in a pinch.
To not starve in the afterlife.
To not starve. But once they left the tomb, they had to traverse the perils of the Amduat, or the underworld. Basically, the world of the night. Okay? And they had to follow the sunboat as it traveled through the underworld. And should they get stuck in any of those sections and not make it to the next section, they could have a really miserable time of things. They could be tortured, eaten, destroyed, punished. You know, there's a lot of perils in the afterlife for the Egyptians. And then once they made it to the 12th section of the night, they would then work the fields of Osiris for all eternity.
And that was a happy ending for people?
Well, define happy.
Well, not starving is good, I guess.
They could still starve. Because even though they worked the fields of the Osiris didn't share his grain. You still had to go back to your tomb to receive offerings to keep from starving.
Oh, that's a bummer.
That is a bummer, yeah. And once you get to the fields of Osiris, you don't go up or down in rank. If you were a farmer in this life, you're a farmer in the next life. If you're a soldier in this life, you're a soldier in the next life. You stay exactly the same occupation you were in death and life.
So the lower class people was buried with like small figurines too, like all ones mummified, or?
Well, mummification was reserved for the upper classes.
Yeah.
Okay. The lower classes were usually just buried in a pit. They might have a spoon and maybe a bowl, and that would be all the grave goods they had. So, like, farmers were really just buried, you know, dropped in a tomb.
So they were doomed to starve in the afterlife?
Yeah. Yeah. No one cared about a farmer.
At least they got a spoon and a bowl.
Yeah, at least they got a spoon and a bowl, yeah. Pretty much.
Maybe they could have used that somehow.
They might not get food offerings, but at least they can feed themselves if they ever got any.
Yeah. Like living on the hope, or dying on the hope, I guess. Hope of maybe getting some food sometime.
Yeah.
Do you think the lower class people had more anxiety towards death than the upper class people?
Well, the problem is we don't really know a lot about the lower class. Most of what we have preserved from Egypt is basically from the upper classes, the classes that could write. The lower classes, the farming classes, couldn't write. So we have almost no information about the lower classes except what is recorded in, say, upper class tombs. So we do know some of their agricultural activities, what they did,
Yeah.
but we don't know what marriage was like for them. We don't know what they believed, really. We don't know how, say, marriage ceremonies worked, anything like that.
But you had
They didn't even have permanent
the
settlements.
shrines, right?
Well, they didn't even have permanent settlements. The reason why they didn't have permanent settlements was because they were forced to move every year.
Yeah.
Because they would be, they basically worked the Nile floodplain. So they would go work in the fields, and then the inundation would happen, flood them out, and they'd be forced to move to higher ground. And then they would be on higher ground for 3 months, and then move back down to work the fields. So they're basically, their existence is wiped out every year.
Do you think they had how do you say, nomadic houses that they could pull down and take with them, or?
They used to form a grass hut. Okay, they still use these in Egypt today. Okay, you can see these little like large plots of farmland. You'll see these little grass huts in the middle of the field. Essentially, they during the agricultural season, they would live in these grass huts.
And they would live of the farmland they used, I guess. Do you think they ate meat as well, or only grains?
If they were say farming class, probably mostly grains. Okay, now they did still eat, actually, say, better than other agricultural societies in the ancient Near East. And the reason why was because even the lowest classes ate wheat. Okay, in the rest of the ancient Near East, most of the lower classes ate only barley. And this causes an effect called vitamin A deficiency, or vitamin A blindness. This is why you have so many blind people in the Bible. It's because they're eating a primarily barley diet. And barley does not have the vitamin A to keep their eyesight healthy. Egyptians didn't have that problem because even the lowest classes ate wheat. They used the barley to basically brew beer. And the problem is different. They were brewing beer in Egypt as a form of water purification. When I have students, and I teach them about ancient Egypt, they come into my class with these delusions of the beauty of the Nile, and I said, look, don't think of the Nile like that. Don't think of it as a beautiful river. Think of it as Africa's toilet. Okay, that gets flushed once a year.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that.
It's nasty. It's a nasty river. It really is a nasty. And it's always been seen as sort of a nasty river. Yeah, early modern Europeans waxed eloquent about the Nile, but they would go down the Nile, get really, really sick, and die there. And Egyptians noticed very, very early on that those who drank from wells were healthier than those that drank from the river. And those that drank beer were healthier than those who drank from wells.
Yeah, I think beer was the kind of purification method used in the medieval times as well, right?
Yeah.
And
beer's good stuff, especially if you got really foul water. That happened, we see something similar to that happened in the 19th century in Chicago with the cholera epidemic, where, because of poor city planning, the city of Chicago had attached the sewage system to the fresh water supply. This caused a cholera outbreak that killed, tens of thousands of people. And yet those people who are hanging around in the bars drinking beer never got sick.
Yeah. Alcohol for the win, right?
Yeah, yeah, alcohol for the win.
Yeah. Back to the lower class people. I'm very interested in them. Do you think they kept like animals and stuff while they worked in the fields?
Well, some of them would have, but we have to kind of understand that most of the animals, most of the major livestock, was owned by the nobility. Okay. Now, when it comes to livestock in Egypt, it's essentially a beef culture. It's a beef eating culture. And your typical farmer did not have the money to own a cow. Okay, or what they call a musk ox. You have both cattle and musk ox in Egypt.
Yeah, muskox. Are they related to the muskox in the Sweden and Norway?
Yeah, they're very similar. They're very similar. They're water buffalo. They're very similar.
I've seen one in real life. I was like,
oh yeah, I've seen in Arabic they call this gamusa. They call these gamusa in gamusa. And I decided to walk from where was it now? The temple of Ramses II all the way to the temple of Ramses III. So I'm taking these like agricultural back roads, because there's no sidewalks in Egypt even today. Egyptians don't walk on sidewalks because the few sidewalks they have are just really dangerous to walk on. They're all uneven, and the side the concrete's broken, and everyone walks on the street. Okay, so I'm walking down the middle of the street here, and I've run into a gamusa. Now, they're very dangerous animals. They're very dangerous animals. Fortunately, this one didn't care, but they're big.
Did you feel threatened?
I gave it a wide berth. I gave it a very wide berth.
Like you walked past it like really far?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did it see you?
Oh yeah, it lifted its head. It took a look and then went back to eating its grass. It just didn't care.
Yeah, doesn't sound dangerous.
Well, they are dangerous. They are dangerous. So yeah, I'm fully aware about how dangerous gamusa can be.
Yeah.
But your typical farmer may have tended animals, but they didn't necessarily own them. Okay. Now, they also did not have like sheep. Typically, like you might have seen some people raise swine, but that was pretty rare in Egypt. Swine was not exact. Essentially, any animal that would foul a waterway was considered as verboten. This is why they generally didn't keep pigs, they didn't keep sheep, and they didn't keep goats.
So no smaller animals at all.
No smaller animals. Nothing that could threaten the waterways, because Egypt was dependent on its canals. It was highly dependent on its canals.
So the big animals' excretions didn't pose a threat to the safety of the water?
No, it didn't.
So,
it didn't leach into the water the same way. Okay? Like, for example, if you go past a pig farm today,
yeah,
it smells awful. It is horrible.
Horrible, yes.
And the runoff from a pig farm will just absolutely pollute a waterway. It'll turn that water into something very, very foul smelling.
Like maybe it's more acidic than from a excrement from a bigger animal.
You cannot imagine how bad a pig farm smells until you've driven past one. You'll never forget that experience. It's one of the worst smells you've ever smelled.
Yeah, it's hard to forget. It's really hard to forget.
I mean, cow farms are not always the nicest smelling either, but they smell better than pig farm.
Oh, they do. That's another point on my bucket list, to own a small cow farm in the mountains of Sweden.
Well, that sounds nice.
Like wooden cows that walk in the woods, right?
Okay.
My grandmother had lived up in the mountains and had cows.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I want to replicate when I get older. I really want to just to stand there and shout to them and for them to come home. That seems like a nice experience.
It's a good
Tending
dream.
animals. Yeah,
Yep. Nice dream.
yeah. Thank you. I have many things in my bucket list. So we've gone through animals. We have the lower class people. We talked about the lower class people. We talked about the upper class people. How about the more middle class people? How did
Okay.
they live?
They lived usually in these sequestered villages. Now, your middle class basically ranges from, say, artisans to low-ranking military. Okay, so the military sort of straddles that upper middle class, upper middle class divide. Okay, so you might have archers, and they would be definitely in that middle class. They're not elite, and they're not upper class, and they have no potential to move up the ranks. Okay, and they stay firmly in that middle class. You do have various artisans that also occupy that middle class as well. Like, for example, people who are stone cutters who cut rock tombs. Specialized skill. It's a specialized skill. You also have guys who do, say, carpentry, make the various tomb furniture, like biers and coffins and ritual boxes. You also have decorators. Okay, and you have actually two kinds of decorators. You've got the draftsmen, who actually do the writing and the planning of the decorations, and then you have a class that does painting. You have a typical a craftsman that will actually sit there and basically fill in all the lines. Draw the lines nicely. I think I kind of like this. Like if you know anything about how comic books are made, you get one guy who does the pencils, and then you hand it off to an inker, and the inker finishes it. He puts on the beautiful lines, and then maybe he might send it off to a colorist, who then paints in the colors.
Yeah.
Okay, that sort of assembly line work is very typical of Egyptian craftsmen. Now we also have craftsmen too that are capable of doing all of it. Who are capable of doing, say, everything from building furniture to doing the drafting to doing the painting and the inking and all that. We have accounts from ancient Egypt where you even had, say, where craftsmen that could smelt metal, do forging, gold work, lapidary, stone cutting, like precious stones and setting them. So we do have a lot of evidence for craftsmen that were both specialists and, say, highly skilled generalists. And a lot of it seems to be dependent upon where they lived. In, say, someplace like Kings Valley, like the Valley of the Kings at Deir el-Medina, the workers' village there, you do see more specialization there because the workload is so high. There's so much demand there that they don't have time to do rotate. They just do one thing and they do it well. Whereas some, like a craftsman who might live at, say, Avaris or Paramses, has a lot less demand on them. So their workshops tend to be a lot more generalized. So you get guys who then do everything.
That sounds like a better job.
Yeah. Well, in all cases, they were sequestered. So they lived in these villages that were guarded day and night. So they couldn't leave. And the reason why they couldn't leave is because they owned the tools and the supplies given to them by the king. So the last thing the king wanted, it was for them to leave the village and sell his stuff,
I understand.
which some
But
of them did.
So people didn't like living there, you think?
It's hard to say. I don't know if they liked it or not. We don't get too much. We don't get too many opinions on how living there was. They did strike sometimes. Sometimes they're in exchange for living there, the king was supposed to supply the craftsmen with, say, bread and fish and wine. But sometimes those shipments didn't come in. And when those shipments didn't come in, the workers would go on strike. So there were labor relations problems that happened there.
What is? Do you think it was poor years for the ruler, or do you think people stole the shipment on the way that didn't get to the workers, or why do you think the people that needed the stuff didn't get it?
Well, the shipments seem to have stopped during times when Egypt seems to have gone through a period of hyperinflation. Okay. Now, we have to understand that Egypt is an economy that lasted 3,000 years. It had a lot of inflation. Now, the way they offset the inflation was they would take control of surrounding nations and basically collect tribute, bring the stuff back to Egypt, and that would keep prices down. When they lost control of those surrounding nations, then the Egyptian economy sort of went berserk. Well, and one of these periods happened at the end of the reign of Ramses III. We start seeing this. And what's happening at the end of the reign of Ramses III is, say, the beginnings of the Late Bronze Age collapse. Egypt is losing its holdings. The Hittite Empire had already lost its holdings and was undergoing a famine and invasion. We saw the Mitanni Empire crumble. It was a really hard time for the big states. And it's also at this time when we start seeing, say, incursions happen, a turnover happen in the Levant, too. You get, at this time period, you get the Philistines invading the coastal plain of, say, Israel. And you have the Israelites coming in from the east into the Judean foothills. And they're essentially dividing Egypt's old hegemony between themselves.
Do you think they brought riches with them, or were they equally poor states as the people in Egypt? Do you think the people that lived where the takeover was got better lives or worse lives from?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say. We don't have so much from, say, the Philistines. We don't know about them per se. They didn't leave us a lot of written records, unfortunately. It would be nice if the Philistines had left us a little more in writing. In the case of the Israelites, we have more in writing. And it does seem that, say, compared to neighboring nations, things were an improvement, generally. You had, say, an established set of laws. Contrary to popular opinion, the Israelites did not wipe out all the Canaanites. They pretty much took the towns, they took the cities. But those, say, Canaanites who were living in, say, more agricultural regions, kind of was hands-on, hands-off. Sometimes they took the land, sometimes they didn't. So it really depends.
Yeah, I understand. Oh, we have talked for over an hour. Do you have a little more time for a few questions?
Sure.
Yeah. I have a few questions from my brothers.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, we have gone through most of them actually. Um, do you think that people lived longer in the bigger settlements than outside of them?
Well, it's hard to say. It's kind of a 50-50 kind of deal, like half dozen, six of another. Kind of. Almost everybody in Egypt lived on knife edge agriculture. Basically, the average diet was within 50 calories of starvation. Okay? And this seems to be true for all classes in Egypt. Of the evidence that we have from, say, mummies, and we remember mummies are the upper class. To be mummified, you have to be upper class. We find that 30% of mummies have evidence of chronic disease or starvation. So if you're the upper class and you're starving, there ain't a lot of food around. There just isn't a lot of food. And we even see this among, say, yeah, we even see this among, say, royal princes. Children of kings. Just because you were born to a king didn't mean you ate all the time. This is also why we don't find a lot of obesity in kings. Like most of the kings of Egypt are very, very thin. There's only, say, one exception to this. It was the basically Queen Hatshepsut. She's the only obese Egyptian king we know of.
Do you know what she ate? Did she have honey? Did she have?
My guess is she probably had a diet high in dates, honey, and milk. Okay. She might have followed the diet of, say, Punt. Okay. Now, we do know that at the time of Queen Hatshepsut, obesity was considered a mark of beauty. It was a mark of wealth, of status, and very few were able to do it. The women of Punt were said to be very, very beautiful. And that's because of their how do I say this? Their great girth. Okay, they were big women. Okay, so it might have been that Hatshepsut tried to emulate that. We have, for example, in, say, some of the royal portraiture of her, where she's being shown as very, very slender, but that seems to be more along the lines that the king is supposed to be this warrior figure. While being a woman of size might be a mark of beauty in Egypt, it wasn't the mark of a good king. The mark of a good king was your ability to basically threaten neighboring nations to keep them away from your food supply.
Yeah, that sounds about right?
Yeah. So, that's the only evidence we have of say, an obese king. The only evidence we have of it.
If you have milk, I guess you can make cream and butter too, right?
Yep, cream, butter, but really a lot of bread, as much bread as you can eat. And really, the cream and the butter is not so bad. But when you're starting to eat lots of dates,
yeah, combining.
Yeah, you're combining dates and honey with bread.
Yeah.
Now you're now basically got a diet that's almost as healthy as the standard American diet.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the cheeseburgers of the ancient world.
Yeah.
And that's actually what caused all the tooth decay in that we see in mummies.
Oh.
Is the dates. The date palms. Because dates are sticky. And they're full of sugar.
Was it very common to have dates in every household, or do you think it's only
we start seeing
some people?
we start seeing the introduction of the date palm in Egypt around Dynasty 18. Okay, so it's around Dynasty 18, the New Kingdom, beginning of the New Kingdom, that we start seeing the introduction of the date palm. And with the introduction of the date palm, the way you propagate those is they basically have side shoots, shoots from the base that you dig up and you just move. So as long as you can keep digging up those shoots and planting them, you could just spread them out all over the place. And that's what people
So,
did.
so is it safe to assume that everyone had dates?
A lot of people had dates. Yeah, yeah. It was very very common because they were so easy to propagate.
Well, I do know how it is to live with a lot of sugar and bread and like I have been overweight for quite some time, but I'm trying
I
to
had
get
to, I had to dump the sugar and the breads and all that, because I contracted diabetes in my 40s. Okay, so at that point, it was like, okay, I can either keep my pancreas or I can, start shooting up the insulin. I
Yeah.
picked the pancreas.
Oh, really? That's a good choice.
That's a good choice. So
Yes.
I don't eat sugar. I don't eat any wheat or bread products. I'm on what's called a ketogenic diet. So I eat mostly meat and fat.
Yeah, I'm
So
trying to keep to
butter's
that too.
fine. My blood sugar has been normal ever since I went on this diet. So
Yeah.
I no longer
I'm
have a problem
trying.
with diabetes.
My father had 3 months in a ketogenic diet. He lost 30 kilos in like 3 months. That's amazing to
Yeah,
me. And I tried it, and it's so hard. It's really, really, really
it's
hard to
hard
get
if you love
ketogenic
bread.
diet. Yes,
It's hard if you love bread.
yeah, and I
It's
do
hard
love
if you love
bread.
sugar.
Exactly.
My mother can't do it.
Mm,
She loves her bread. She loves her pasta.
mm,
She loves her chocolates and her ice cream.
mm,
She'll never get up, but she's also pumping insulin like it's going out of style too.
mm.
So
Yeah, I want to avoid that. I've
yeah, I
been
did
going to the
too.
gym a lot lately. I'm trying to go to the gym every day, but it's like 3 or 4 days a week right now. I hope I get to get to be the strong warrior in the future, and I try to
Just
keep
like the
it.
kings of Egypt.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to be like a Hatshepsut.
Yes. I trained martial arts for like 10 years,
Okay,
and
what style?
some, I trained wushu, oshin
Okay,
shun,
okay,
and some Wing Chun, and I really liked it. But I was only a white belt for like 10 years. I learned
okay,
some things, but and I still love it. So and I've learned medieval fencing as well
okay.
with a medieval
Awesome.
longsword,
All right,
and
cool.
and yeah, I love that too. So I'm training to get strong enough to get into martial arts again. I really hope I can get to that. And yeah,
Well,
have you?
I did jujitsu for 8 years. Okay. I did pretty much. I almost made it to instructor rank,
Mm,
but I don't think I can take those falls anymore. I still do
mhm,
Tai Chi though,
mm,
to keep up the muscle memory.
mm,
I do a combat style of Tai Chi called Chen.
mm. Is it a soft or hard style?
Hard style.
Hard
Hard
style.
style of Tai Chi.
Mm.
So there's punches, kicks, all that stuff. Blocks.
Yeah, I really love the how do you say the theory behind every punch and the lounge and every stance and the nerdy stuff. I
For
really
me,
hope.
I loved. For me, I love the nerve arts. I love the nerve arts and the bone breaking. That was that's so technical. It's just I really adored it.
Mm. that scares me. I studied martial arts to learn how not to hurt people. Like, if you do this, you kill someone. Okay, so if you do slightly another thing, they're still alive afterwards. So,
Well, I love
that's
the
one
nerve arts.
thing.
I love the nerve arts because you can actually immobilize someone without hurting them.
Yeah.
You know, you
Well,
can actually
it hurts,
immobilize.
actually.
It hurts.
Right?
Yeah, it hurts, but you're not doing any permanent damage. You might leave a little bruise, but that's it. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, immobilizing
make-
someone with a handshake is priceless.
Yeah. I'm dreaming of a martial art that where I just like put people down on the ground, like laying down, as gently as possible, and and call
I don't
it,
think that one exists.
No, I'm inventing it actually.
Oh, okay.
At least it's in my bucket list.
Sure.
How do you say? In Swedish, it's förnedring. In English, it's humiliation, right?
Right.
The most humiliating way to to win over someone. That no pain and nothing, just lay them down on the floor.
Well, you know, people have asked me sometimes, have I ever used my martial arts in, a self-defense, situation? And I said, oh, no, I haven't. I mean, the only thing I've ever bruised with the martial arts is someone's pride.
Yeah, I've used martial arts once in a situation, walking past the church and seeing a woman bothered one by some drunk guy, and she seemed very, how do you say, very troubled. So I asked her, "Are you okay?" I asked her, and she said, "No, please help." So I took the guy in his shoulders and tried to put him down gently on the ground, and kept him there until the police came. That's the only time I actually used martial arts in well, not my defense, I guess, not in self-defense, in defense of another person, I guess. But it was very exciting.
Oh, I bet.
The police called me afterwards and asked me why I essentially didn't beat up the guy. And I said to them, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. So,
Martial artist who doesn't believe in violence.
yeah, exactly. I believe in the ultra soft, style, I guess, or chopping people's head offs with a long sword.
Oh yeah, because that's less violent.
Yeah, less likely to happen anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Let's see if I had one extra question, if you have time.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you think we should learn from the people living in that era, to bring that in to today's society? Do you think anything happening then should be in our society?
I think the one thing we should bring out of ancient Egypt is the fact that humanity fundamentally has not changed. There's this neat little set of papyri called the tomb robbery papyri, where, basically people who build the tombs were robbing them. And there's this official investigation that went on, to find out who the culprits were that were robbing these tombs. And the interesting thing is, when they apprehended the suspects, there'd always be lies. They're the same lies that we see today. Oh, that's not my bronze. I'm just holding it in safekeeping for my brother.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, no, I didn't rob that tomb. I was just with my cousin here to keep him out of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds about right.
Oh, they wanted me to resell that bronze, but I told them no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's the exact same lies that you see on like cop shows like Cops. Exact same lies, just 3,000 years ago.
yeah,
Humanity fundamentally is still the same,
exactly. And that's
and
why
that's why these texts, whether it be Egyptian texts or say the Bible, still have relevance to us today, because we have fundamentally not changed.
I believe that we can go even further back, right, from the older Stone Age, and try to see how people lived then, and somehow assume that people were people back then too. Right?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's not my woolly mammoth tusk. I was just holding it for my cousin.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just going on that woolly mammoth hunt to keep my cousin out of trouble.
Exactly.
Sure, it was the exact same lies back then too.
Yeah, yeah. I really love thinking about the people from the ancient times, like that we actually are the same, and it's our society that makes us a little weird today, but we have the essential same needs, right?
Yeah.
The needs of a community, the needs of safety in a group, and the needs of
we have the needs to know where we are in the world, who we are, where did we come from, where are we going, what is God, what is mankind. These are fundamental questions, ultimately unanswerable questions of religions, both ancient and modern. Egyptians asked these same questions. The Egyptians asked
to be able to answer them.
Lots of luck.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
but the fundamental questions have always been the same. How do we have relationship with this thing we call the divine? How do we participate? How do we get the gods to notice us? Everything that the Egyptians did religiously was based upon certain ideas of divinity and godhood that may not be like our concepts, but they are driven by fundamentally similar questions. And that's what I find very, very interesting about this, is their answers are different. Their answers are very, very different. The fundamental questions are the same. How do you approach a all-holy God? Almost every religion of every culture asks something similar to that. But every culture will have, every religious in every culture will have a different answer.
Well, slightly different answer. So, some have
similar answers, but
similar.
But say rituals of ancient Egypt were very, very different than say rituals of prehistoric Europe. Okay, they're even very different from what we find in the Levant. So and modern attempts to try to reconstruct Egyptian religion are very, very different yet again. So yeah, there's the answers are different. Some of it is the fact that we are on say 2,000 years of say theological reflection afterwards. Where after those cultures have provided those answers, people start asking new questions, and when they start asking new questions, you start rabbit trailing, into whole new lines of theological inquiry.
Well, I'm really looking forward to learning a lot more about this. And
Awesome.
I thank you for coming to my interview.
Oh, my pleasure.
And now it's 12:30 in the middle of the night here in Sweden. So it's past
Well, I
my bedtime by
appreciate
4
you.
hours.
I appreciate you staying up. Allowed me to get some sleep, so I do appreciate that tremendously. And it was a real pleasure to be on your channel today.
A real pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Dr. Falk.
Thank you very much.
And as a philosopher who loves learning wisdom, I thank you even more.
My pleasure.
Have a good night and
You too.
evening, and have a good day over there. It's the middle of the day, right?
Yeah, it's 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, bye-bye.
Bye
Good night.
bye.